So the younger ones, are more digital. They have more digital predisposition, which will enable them to really catch up more easily than their analog masters. You can see that there is something they will be bringing to the table. If government trains such people and unleash them in the commerce arena, they will become far more useful to their organ, going beyond bookkeeping and record keeping, to help in connecting their organ to suppliers that are cheaper in China, India, everywhere.
True tech.
Do you understand that? True tech.
Okay. So we begin today's conversation taking our quote from Andrew Young, an American businessman, attorney, lobbyist, and political candidate. He once said, "In most every business, you learn by doing. The apprenticeship model is much more effective than the classroom for cultivating entrepreneurs." And I will take our second quote, and this one is from Randy West, an American television personality best known for his work on game shows. He once said, "If you have real passion for a career in game shows, be willing to serve an apprenticeship. It is the best way to learn." I agree. Now, our third quote is from John Constable, an English landscape painter in the Romantic tradition. He once said, "There has never been a boy painter, nor can there be the art. The art requires a long apprenticeship, being mechanical as well as intellectual." So we'll take our final quote, and this is from Doug Scorth, an English mountaineer noted for being on the team that made the first ascent of the southwest face of Mount Everest on 24th September 1975. He once said, "Nothing substitutes a large apprenticeship, a heap of experiences which converts into the base of intuition." Wow, very interesting quote, you'd say. Now let's see how all of this relates to what we will be discussing today. Warm greetings and welcome to the conversation. We're reaching you from Captain's Television Studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Oji. Now, the Igbo Apprenticeship System is an unpaid business apprenticeship incubator model that lets young boys learn business method from a master for a certain number of years, usually between 5 to 8, 10 years, or even more. And at the end of their entrepreneurship, or their apprenticeship tenure rather, they get cash infusion and support to start their own business. The structure works in a manner where an older uncle in trade teaches and establishes his younger kin in the said trade, who in turn teaches other young folks. Now, did you get that? Maybe not. But no need to worry. That's our topic of discourse today with our guest, Dr. Law Mefor, who is a media consultant, and we also have Taiwo Adepoju, who is managing partner, the CEO of Strength Africa Limited. They will help us do justice to this topic. Don't move a muscle. That's after this timeout. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from Captain's Television Studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now, if you just joined us, you're right on time for the interview. Our guest on the show, we have two guests. Our first guest is Dr. Law Mefor. He is a media consultant. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me.
Great to have you.
Thank
All right,
you.
we also have here in the studio Taiwo Adepoju. He is a managing partner and CEO, Strength Africa Limited. You're welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure being here.
Great to have you. All right, now let's get down to business. But we'll start with you, Dr. Law Mefor. Let's start by peeling off the layers for a lot of people who don't understand what Igbo Apprenticeship System, or like the Igbos call it Iba boy or Iba Odibo. Please help us make sense of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon, developed over time by the Igbo community, especially their business class, trying to help in incubating young businesses, giving the younger ones, especially the less privileged ones, a kind of upstart, helping them to start off their own businesses. But before you do that, you are expected to undergo the training and, of course, sort of pay the bills. A young boy, usually boys, is taken up by one who is already well-to-do, who is established in a particular business. And the young man is supposed to stay with the master, the Oga, because you talked about Igbo boy, The boy now is the boy, That's what the whole thing is all about. So you have a master who you serve, who you understudy, who you help in his business. As you serving out there as a hand in growing your Oga's business, you are learning the trade. And cumulatively, the Oga is expected to settle you. The word settlement is very key here. And it means that whether written or unwritten, there is this contractual agreement between the two parties. The Oga is a party to the contract, and the boy himself is a party to the contract. He may not be the one that entered into the understanding in the first place. It could be his own parents. He could be a son of a widow, and an uncle or a family friend who is already established is trying to help out, takes off one of the boys, from the family, and grooms him, teaches him the trade, and eventually his own side of the bargain would be to start the boy off. Now, you can now see that it's a whole traditional business engine, which is conceived to achieve three things. One is to break what you may call generational poverty transfer, because that's how I see it. That's why I use the example of a son of a widow. One who has lost his father already. It's a major blow, and then the pressure is on the woman to see or kata for the family, and then somebody comes and intervenes. If the family were to be left like that, the woman may not be able to cope, education-wise, or training the children all by herself in any form of trade, and then ultimately starting off the individual to begin to really progress in life. So you can see that at the apprenticeship system, I said that it helps to break generational poverty transfer. It plants riches where otherwise it may not really grow. And ultimately also, it serves a modern sense, what you may call the mechanism to achieve inclusivity. The inclusivity ensures growth and development, even spread of wealth in the society. If you go to a place like Anambra, where I come from, you will see this seed, everywhere you go, and big boys who are really well-to-do, who have made it as this and that in all lines of trade, actually it present as a bragging right the number of people they have been able to start out or start off. Summarily, what happens is that when the individual diligently goes through the process, he is entitled to be settled, and he is settled this way. Conventionally, the man takes steps to ensure that the boy starts off. What many business moguls who take in some of these boys under their wings do is towards the end the tenure, the exit of the boy from the trade, as a way of starting off his own. They, some of them will set up a branch, and get the boy to run that branch. Not necessarily his, but they want to see how he can do, on his own, under direct supervision.
Okay.
Sometimes they will leave him with that branch, and then it becomes his. Sometimes they will give him money, outright, sum that should be able to get a shop, and then they put some goods there. And usually, if the separation is healthy, that it didn't result from any rancor,
between
and
them,
it was healthy, it was mutual. The Oga, still has his eye on the boy. What he further does for him is to keep giving him goods, on credit. He sells, returns the money to him, he gives him another. He can also give him access to his own contacts, his, people who supply him, based on that trust. Those who he has established business contacts with over time will also be supplying his own boy, who is now free of his own direct control. Okay. And by so doing, he is well positioned. The young man is well positioned to start off. And diligently, in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, he is in a position to take in somebody else. Okay, so now, taking a cue from all that you said, it's very understanding. We can understand what, now I'm sure everybody can understand who an apprentice, so Igbo boy means. Yes. So now, for you, do you think that that system or that scheme has been able to meet up to the benefit why it has been established, and since they have been using that system for decades and centuries? Have you actually made up to that? See, I am from Anambra State, like I said, and I know, I have witnessed both the Oga and the boys that grew under them. In my town, in neighboring towns, is one business engine that effectively has been able to prove itself as an upstart, right? As an upstart, helps in creating what you may call uptakers to be able to pull one, from the rudimentary to something quite higher, and this is proved ultimately by the fact that the Harvard Business School has actually understudied the Igbo Apprenticeship System and described it as an upstart engine that should be studied. And I'm also aware, I read some documents propounded by Professor Chukwuma Soludo, the governor of Anambra State. He is, also of the view that the system has not only succeeded, but must be prevented from dying. He is working to revitalize and formalize it, so that the processes involved in it will be refined to the point that the contractual agreements are very clear, witnesses are available, and what to expect from both the parties, clearly spelled out, so that in the final analysis, it leads. It ends in happiness for both sides. For me, it is a huge success because I have seen families, that otherwise would have remained very poor. Okay. But they can boast of 1 or 2 millionaires. And in fact, it's difficult to find a family in Anambra State now that does not have at least 1 millionaire. And many of these millionaires are coming from this apprenticeship system. Okay. So it has succeeded. It has track record that cannot be vilified or set aside by any other analysis that is not factual or evidence-based. All right. Mr. Adepoju, will come to you now. Do you agree with, after understanding what Igbo boy means, do you agree that it has actually, has it been successful? And would you actually say that over the past decades or centuries that it has been observed, has it actually been effective when you talk about the apprentice itself, the boss to the bosses, and even the Nigerian economy at large?
To a large extent, yes.
Okay.
And, it's an interesting model. And I describe it as interesting as so with some of the research I have done, beyond post the Biafran War, it became an instrument of necessity. Okay, even though this had prevailed over time, but as born out of necessity, it's now sufficient for us to move beyond that necessity, to move beyond survival. You see, the apprenticeship system, even though it has been modeled by a few others and being studied right now, and the reports, at some point there have been various reports as to its success, but it's survival based, almost like a startup. Whereas we need to move from survival to scaling.
Ah, okay.
Yes, we talk about the individual, and so when you look at that system, I ask myself, there are companies that are 400 years old today. Can anybody tell me any industry, any business that spun out of the Igbo Apprenticeship System that is 50 years old today? Yes, it gives you the value system to create the entrepreneurial base, the foundation as it were. But we need to transit beyond that point of surviving to scaling and then to significance.
Okay.
You see, good is the enemy of great. And what do I mean by that? Yes, the fundamentals are great. Where else do you learn values such as perseverance, patience, loyalty? You learn the trade in toto. You are tutored. Beyond being tutored, you are coached along the lines. You fail several times, and then you are set up in a whole lot of ways. And yet, that system still has not moved beyond. Yes, he talked about breaking some transgenerational poverty, but it has also not morphed into becoming transgenerational, beyond moving from a generation to the generation. Why? Because it's close-knitted. Now, I allude to the fact that it needs to be reinvented.
Okay.
I'm a proponent for reinvention. Ideal situations can also be probably rejigged to suit contemporary times, because in this time and era also, we have people that use even the remoteness of work, remote work, to even do businesses now, learn the trade. In those times, we did not have YouTube. People can understudy YouTube now. A guy that has not gone through any tutelage can stay through 3 months and internalize some teachings, even though he might not be able to build character over time. Okay, so I think that to an extent, like I said, he's been successful. He's helped to, reduce crime to an extent. He's also created wealth. However, is it enjoying wealth beyond a generation? And it also proves a whole lot of other things, and I'm sure in the course of our discussion, we'll be able to put it open. But for me, I feel to a large extent, this has been one of the greatest pride, or something to be prideful of, that has emerged out of Nigeria and indeed Africa.
All right, so now a lot of people would actually say that, on the other hand, research have shown that children that grow up with absent parents, that they are more likely to be depressed as adults. So do you agree with that assertion? And how much will that even affect, massively affect or impact on those children if they have to go out as either as boys or as girls? How much does growing up from an absentee parent, how much does it affect their psyche?
Okay, so in terms of so psychologically, there are a lot of issues around that. But I think that, and yes, that the further study needs to also be undertaken to also see some of the negatives of that system, because bear in mind that most of the people that are subscribed to the apprenticeship schemes are not necessarily the children of the master. They're probably, like you said,
uncle
or widow,
the
the son of a widow, I'm sure right now they're also embracing the women folk, because that system had disparaged the women folk over time and centered on the male, hoping that, and then there's also the tradition around the firstborn, taking over. But the absentee parent could mean the child would enter into some kind of depression. There are also elements where there are traumas, because even I heard life when Cosmos Maduka, Koscharis, the owner of Koscharis, was discussing how his master then was a bit stern to him, and at some point he had to, I think they parted ways with 200 naira, and he just made up his mind that he was going to launch out. Now, but not everybody has that level of emotional intelligence or threshold to be able to withstand some of the traumas. A lot of people, that could have triggered something negatively, if not for, well, let's put it quote on unquote, the fear of the Lord, that's also instilled in him the ability to be able to persevere and forgive, because there's the element, there are some masters that have been cruel, to, their mentees, as the case may be, and this had led to some matters that we cannot even address right now, in terms of violence, even down to domestic violence, because it's what they learn over time that has been transmuted, across, various circles. So I feel on a proper view of the impact psychologically needs to be done, because really people need parents, however it is, and role models, and it cannot just be a father figure alone. There's the role the mother plays, and a system that is devoid of accommodating to the woman folk in that whole structure, can also be seen as dysfunctional.
All right, so Dr. Law, you actually said that you agree that it is a success, and I hear Mr. Taiwo say that it needs to be reinvented. So now, definitely we've heard of stories where the ogas or the bosses have complained of theft, that their boys either stole from them, which is even very common these days, and then some of them even have complained of being swindled by their mentees. Some of them have complained of security challenges. Probably they're being open to kidnapping through those boys and all. So now with all of that, and then we've also, like you even stated, you also talked about settlement. At the end of it, there must be the part of settlement. And then we've heard some boys say that they left their bosses and then they were not settled at the end of that contract, which you said that they must sign, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Now, in all of this, do you agree that that system needs to be reinvented or rejigged?
I said so, even, and you don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. It's an age-old or age-long business intervention model, and things are changing. Times are changing. You don't leave it the way you inherited it. You have to check how to connect it to the modern economy moving forward. It's not just the Igbo Apprenticeship System that needs to do that. The entire, Nigerian economy, state-based economies will have to connect to the world economy. You need to look at where the world is now. The world has actually arrived at what you may call the fourth industrial revolution. And it is ICT, tech, internet driven. And I think that may have informed the thinking of Soludo is looking at the possibility of transforming Anambra State into a smart city. That anything smart is about, connectivity to a world global information system. It's about internet, it's about ICT, it's about tech, everything technology. If you take your bearing, from this to now consider what should be the future of Igbo Apprenticeship System, you will see that a lot of rejigging needs to be done there.
Okay.
I believe that what is going on in a place like Anambra State is more of trading. And the whole thing will have to be rejigged, not just the apprenticeship system. The trading needs to really be upgraded to commerce. Do you understand that? There's a difference between trading and commerce. Commerce will enable you key into technology. You know, visual shops. You don't need to set up a shop, a physical shop in the main market. You don't need that. You know, today's youth, you know, can be helped to, you know, move into the vortex of digitization, and connect that to e-commerce. Okay. Do you understand that? Yes. So they can be trained. You know, what I'm saying is, you can bring the training to bear, you know, in this system, so as to even help get the young ones trained in ICT, in tech, to help their organs that may be analog. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
That may be analog. You know, those who were born more than 50 years ago, you know, our era, you know, are actually struggling with tech, right? So the younger ones, you know, are more digital. They have more digital predisposition, which will enable them to really catch up more easily than their analog masters. You can see that there is something they will be bringing to the table. If government trains such people and unleash them in the commerce arena, they will become far more useful to their organ, going beyond bookkeeping and record keeping, to help in connecting their organ to suppliers that are cheaper in China, India, everywhere.
Through tech.
Do you understand that? Through tech.
Okay.
I'm building a scenario of the kind of innovation that must be introduced in this for it to really, you know, be in sync, come to par with where the world is at the moment. That's why I started by saying that you need to up the issue of trading and bring it up to commerce, and not just commerce, e-commerce. Do you understand that? And these younger ones can help in doing that, because their own age has more digital disposition than those you know, older generations that are more analog. Right. You know, people who are playing catch up. I'll give you an example with my 7-year-old son. He understands my phone more than I do. Do you understand that? It's their age. So it has to be rejigged totally. And the way to rejig it, we'll have to have a site set on connecting trading to commerce to e-commerce. And that way you are breaking into a new realm of productivity.
All right.
And it will be revolutionary if they think in that direction.
All right, so we're due for a break, but before we go on that break, a lot of people have actually said that, or they believe that the Igbo Apprenticeship System have taken more than it has actually given. For instance, that it has killed male child education system, especially in the Southeast. Very quickly, do you agree with that?
I don't think it has killed education, the male child education. You're talking about the school male child dropout around the Southeast. You have dropouts everywhere. And I still do not think that Anambra State, for example, harbors the highest male dropout in Nigeria. They still do fantastically well where it comes to education. Anambra has never come below 5th in the last 1 decade. And it's the boys and girls that go to school. Do you understand that? However, some have been drawn away from you know, higher education. They believe it is quicker to go into trade and make money sooner. And it's not an Anambra thing. It's because the system itself has not rewarded education. Because you have graduates of 10 years and counting who have no job. So it's difficult to convince these younger ones that going to school is even rewarded. And I think that also is something that should not be ignored. I agree that to some extent it has contributed. And state governments, not just Anambra or Southeast, everywhere, must think deeply in that direction. I have proposed evening college system, for example. I have proposed vocational, educational system. These ways you'll be able to trade and still keep in touch with education.
Okay.
Do you understand that? You can go to school, in the evening and trade in the morning. Yes. It's innovation. Why not?
Okay.
Why not? There is no time education cannot be acquired. It can be in the morning, afternoon, or night. So if you have a full-blown evening college system, vocational system, ICT, educational system, and so on and so forth, you will discover that those who appear to have left formal education for trading will be able to catch up in no time.
I'm sure a lot of people will actually ask, how much has the evening classes done? We'll come back to that after this time out. Please join us again.
The only platform that affords that is education. Insights, because there's no way, even when you hear people, I've had a lot of jokes around this. The man says, nah, what's the business with my education? I have a MRS, that's Mrs. that has an MSc, I can employ anybody I want. But you see, the failure of that is that you employ anybody you want that kind of knows more than you get threatened. So what I advocate also is that whoever is currently on that scheme or in that system should also do what you call self-learning.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you've missed quite a lot, but then you can still join in the conversation as our guest. And the show today is Dr. Law Mefor. He is a media consultant, and we also have Taiwo Adepoju, who is managing partner, CEO of Strength Africa Limited. All right, and before we went on that break, Dr. Law was actually talking about how much we can rejig this, and then you have some of these boys go to school in the evening and then trade in the morning. And then some people will say, how much has the evening class even done in that regard? All right, so even talking about that, now seeing the fact that these boys have to spend up to 4 to 8 or even more years in that apprenticeship system with their bosses or their mentors, and then at some point some of them complain about they're not being settled, and then someone was even saying that if you have to spend all that time going to learn work, either spare parts or something, why not you spend that time going to school? So do you actually agree with that?
Okay, so like I said, there's the good and the bad of that system, and one of the things I love about that system is that there are 3 fulcrums it provides. 1, it gives the ability to trade. 2, it gives you the ability to have a skill. And 3rd, it gives you the ability to do commissioning and commissions. Now, if you understand the dimensions of business in that line, you realize that what is needed as an addendum to that will be some form of body of knowledge. Okay, so that's where the book insight comes in. You see, the failure of the system is that whereas it gives you the elements around character, around the values to build a business, and it also gives you the mechanisms to actually trade in that business. Prior to that time, there has been a body of knowledge in terms of research to say, oh, how do business survive? How do business market? How do you operate a supply chain? So what happens with that system is that you are limited to the exposure of your master. Whereas when you have blended learning, you are also now exposed, to other insights from every side of the world. So what I allude to, with the fact that there's need to, in rejigging and in, maintaining that or driving off with the hub, because the startup hub, we must include blended learning.
Okay.
With blended learning, we can achieve the success of the current and move beyond survival and transit to the point where we can scale. There's been a lot of wastages as a result of the lack of the body of knowledge. What do I mean? You see, over time, whatever a master has learned, his errors, his wins, is not documented. So, you find out that when I was asking initially that, can you tell me a business that is 50 years old? You find out that every of those experiences has been thrown to waste. Whereas a company like Vopak in Netherlands, 400 years old plus, started selling, bottling vegetable oil, and they are now the largest oil tanking business. Still a family business, but they've been able to, inculcate blended learning, open it up beyond just themselves, have a robust board. So rather than still running as an SME, you see, that's what I'm talking about. Businesses must morph from the self-employed to the the SME bit, get into being a business, then move on to being an investor, and and then you can now start to talk about you are moving beyond your generation. And you see, the only platform that affords that is education, insights, because there's no way. Even when you hear people, I've had a lot of jokes around this. The man says, "Nah, what's the business with my education? I have a MRS, that's Mrs. that has an MSc. I can employ anybody I want." But you see, the failure of that is that you employ anybody you want that kind of knows more than you get threatened. So what I advocate also is that whoever is currently on that scheme or in that system should also do what you call self-learning. Okay. And so we've had a couple of people also, they've started to go to Harvard, they've started to inculcate various mechanisms to develop themselves. That way they can have that blend of, yes, the old wine, but with a new wine advantage. Bottle. Yes, in new bottles.
Okay, so now let's for those people who have complained that they've been exploited, that they were not settled after all the years that they spent during that apprenticeship system. Let's get to understand what is the difference between help and exploitation.
Okay, whilst we talk about help and exploitation, let's also remember that how does the system provide for or mitigate against the economic onslaughts in terms of what happened in 2016, what happened during recession, during SAP and all of that? Business will fail. Structures of businesses, all over the world, not just in Nigeria. You have businesses, you set up 100 business today. In 5 years, only about 20 will survive. Data. So even with the success of the Igbo Apprenticeship Scheme, you also have that, you see, we're not taking note of those that have failed. We're only talking about a few that could have been better if they were properly guided and monitored. So at some point, how do you distinguish between exploitation? When genuinely a master did a trade, but as a result of the FS risk, the business got destroyed, and you have served for 4 years, just about the time you wanted to get into that settlement area. It was 2016. Business collapsed. Would you call that exploitation? So there's also, because it's the guy that wears the crown that feels the pain, or the guy that wears the shoe that feels the pain, right? So sometimes also what we could interpret as exploitation, most times is not necessarily exploitation, even though yes, there are people that outrightly have exploited their mentees to the point where they had built their wealth, and despite them, the system has a way of correcting that. Yes. So in communities like Arochukwu are here, that look, when you want to go for anything significant, they ask you, who have you helped? And if you cannot say, oh, this person, this community, obviously you cannot even vie for any of those positions. So for help, I think as to help, that system has helped a lot. As to exploitation, I believe that at some point our interpretation of exploitation has also not been, because we have researched deeply into it. But yes, we have some bad eggs, and those bad eggs, the system has a way of correcting them. Now, in this new or proposed, reinvented Igbo boy system, that's the apprenticeship system, is to say, how do we mitigate against this risk? How do we ensure that we reduce failure or we reduce the consequences of not having. So is there like an insurance that we would have to give?
We'll definitely come back to insurance later. All right, so Dr. Law, we had, so recently the chairman of United Nigeria Airlines, that Obiora Okonkwo, stated that Igbo Apprenticeship System has the capacity to mop up army of unemployed youths and engage them meaningfully. I'm just thinking, how so? Now, in his word, he said, and quote, when youths are meaningfully engaged, they rarely have time to engage in criminal activities. But then there's the needless pressure in the society to be successful. Yes, that's on the part. And then because we already know that over the past few years, we have been able, society at large, we have been able to we have positively fueled that pressure into these boys, because when they go out to serve their masters, the next thing you are, as a parent, they're waiting for, or the society is waiting for, is he must definitely come back with a car, he must definitely come back doing well. So first, that's one on the side. That's two questions, and I know you can help us unbundle them. That one on the side is that thought from the Mr. Obiora Okonkwo, saying that we can use this Igbo apprenticeship system to mop up unemployment from the youth. That's one on the side. How so? And then secondly, that pressure that we've been able to inculcate in this youth or these boys when they go out, that is there. How can we be able to ameliorate that?
Well, I didn't read the whole report of Dr. Obiora Okonkwo's intervention. But if that is the meat of his submission, I think he's wrong. He's mixing up, employment and the Igbo apprenticeship system.
Okay.
They are two different things. And Igbo apprenticeship essentially is between a mentor and a mentee in business environment. And if he says he would recommend we deploy that to mop up unemployment in the southeast or everywhere, I think it's going to be a far cry. You know why? You need to look at the figures, the number of unemployed youths, roaming the streets now, and then the businessmen that are in a position to take one or two of them in. You will see that it's only a small percentage that will be able to address. What he should be recommending, and I need to really point that out, is, what I tried to bring into the mix earlier. I say that the world is already verging into the fourth industrial revolution, and it is ICT driven. Tech is everything tech. Do you understand that? That is where we should be focusing in terms of dealing with unemployment in the southeast, in Nigeria, everywhere. Do you understand that? If you do so, I said once you are able to, move your business from trading to commerce to e-commerce, right? You will now be able to create visual stores. Look at, I came here by a boat. A boat is only a platform. It's an app. Do you understand that? The operators of Uber and Bolt, they probably don't have any cars. Do you understand that? But they're able to connect, taxi owners and taxi users. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. If you cash into that, and somebody like Obiora Okonkwo should be able to drive that process, much of it is included in the transition committee report of Soludo, of which I was privileged to serve as a member. You will see that the whole idea is to retrain. My brother here was talking about skilling. It's not just skilling, reskilling. You skill and you reskill to be able to move them up to a level where they are able to benefit to what has unraveled upon the world at the moment. If you get our youths who are unskilled to be skilled in ICT, do you understand that? They will be able to help digitalize the business world and become part players. He doesn't need to leave the comfort of his father's house. All he needs is a laptop. All he needs is just an application. And he's able to connect the world from where he is. That is what can deal with unemployment. Then you talked about
how about the society?
Yeah.
That mentality is like,
yes,
like
the
it's a hogwash.
You see, one of the unfortunate things happening now, in our society, Igbo land inclusive, is accepting money you don't know the source. How can a mother, when we were growing up, it's unthinkable that a mother would put pressure on an apprentice son to bring something home before he or she really graduates from the engagement. It's not done, but now it is being done. Once you do so, you are actually approving that the boy can steal, because he doesn't have any money of his own. He's not paid. His payment will cumulatively come in his settlement. So if you are asking him to bring money today before he exits the arrangement,
the program,
it means that he has to take the money from somewhere, and most probably from his own oga. And once the oga finds out that he's stealing from him, he begins to create the bad blood that may culminate in the oga sending him away before the settlement. I agree that there are some ogas that are actually very irresponsible and very callous. They will not want to settle even the diligent boys. Of course, we know those ones. And for such tendency, I am proposing that there is a very strong fundamental need for us to really not only rejig, or rather, making the rejigging process of the apprenticeship system to include setting out formalities, even a law. I know that there is a proposal to Professor Chukwuma Soludo to provide a legal framework for Igbo Apprenticeship System. Because if you provide a legal framework, every party to it knows precisely, his or her, obligations. The mentee would know the obligation, the mentor would know the obligation, and there will be witnesses.
Okay.
Witnesses, for example, let me give you an example. In Anambra State, we are about 200 communities, which you call towns. There is no town in Anambra State that is not unionized, or that does not have an Igwe, an Eze, right? One who is the traditional ruler. And the union, in my town, Abatete, you have the union called Abatete Development Organization. It has branches all over the world, where you have up to 10 and more Abatete people. In Abuja here, very strong. You have a president general. So these two men should be able to be a witness. So if you have a law regulating the engagement, the apprenticeship system, the Igwe of the town, the president general of the town should be able to witness the engagement. They will now, as witnesses, carry a kind of oversight function. If any of the parties has, a complaint about how the contract is unfolding, you have a place where to report to. And I also know that if government has such a regulation, there should be a desk with appropriate ministry in the state that will be able to help in clearing some of these cobwebs. Okay. If you do so, the points of engagement will be clear to everybody, and the parents, the guardians of these boys that are asking them to bring something before them can also be reported in good time. Okay, so and once you do that, there will be sanity in the process, and you do more than that. You need to upgrade so that these boys are actually skilled, not just in learning the trade alone. They need to go ahead. They need to go a notch higher than that to acquire appropriate skill that will take them to e-trading.
Okay, so now you talked about, because you mentioned the government. Now, according to the airline operator, he also called on traders and tradesmen to partner with the government so as to help this program or this scheme to become something large. And then I just remember, because he talked about data. Now, let's talk about the use of data. How would you be able to, if you have to bring the government into this and then partner with them in terms of bailout funds, to give out funds to maybe these youth when they are done with their apprenticeship program, they can get funds from either the government or something to start up their own businesses. Now, if we talk about data, how much we need to inculcate data in all of this, we don't have a good data system. So how would the government even bring up I'm trying to get the word M&E, monitoring and evaluation, to ensure that this person I gave 2,000, for example, is making use of that 2,000 naira judiciously, because we know that these are young boys. They will definitely want to go to the bar, they want to eat ECAU, they want to eat, they have girlfriends. So one way or the other, the money is reducing or even finished.
That is why my friend told you that statistically, if you start in such mass intervention, don't expect more than 20% success. It's a global trend, as a matter of fact. And I'll tell you why it is so. You see, when you do empowerment in this part of the world, you bring in a widow and her colleagues and you give them 200,000, 300, half a million to start doing something. But you have not dealt with certain fundamentals that will demand that money from them. Then you have done nothing. I'll give you an example. If you calculate the cost of malaria in a home, you will not believe it. How much a widow would spend in a year treating malaria in her home is coming from that trading money. The school system is so useless. The public education system has completely collapsed in Nigeria. And if you don't deal with health, you don't deal with education, empowerment will never work. Not here. It's not possible, because the people will have to go back to that money you gave them to deal with this. That is why, when we had the opportunity to advise Professor Soludo, we say, look, deal with public education. Whatever you can do to get public education in Anambra right, that's the first thing. And the next is public health. Once you deliver on this, empowerment will have higher success value. Okay. Do you understand that? Because it means that that a widow will not have to be dipping her capital to be able to take care of these exigencies that she must attend to. If she is sick, she has to take something. She has to take some medication. The children sick must take medication, and they've got to go to school. And since the public health system is comatose and the public educational system is dead and completely dilapidated, if you recover that too, essentially, do you understand that? You have taken more than half of the burden of the life essentials that that woman you have tried to empower would be needing money for. You've taken half of that out. Okay. That way, the capital with which she is doing her akara business or kiosk business or whatever she is doing will have chances of surviving to the next day. Okay. So the proposal to make it a mass-oriented thing, they call on all and sundry government big corporations to help the apprenticeship system, where they need to address their mind to. It's not necessarily giving these boys money for startup. I've already said what government exists for in a capitalist system is to provide a level playing ground. Do you understand that? And then regulation. Government is there to regulate. Okay. Government is not necessarily there, for economic empowerment as such. Right. Fine. Let me just drop this point. Then you take it from there. Government needs to go beyond just giving money. For me, giving money and calling it empowerment, it amounts to throwing money at problems. I don't believe in that. You don't throw money at problems. You need to, in fact, even the so-called empowerment must not be free. It does not matter the percentage. Even if it is 0.0001%, let it be said that you are going to pay something. All right. That is called interest in this money you have been given. If you don't do it that way, people see it as their own share of the national cake. And that is where it ends. Okay. It does not encourage productivity.
All right, Mr. Taiwo, even just exactly as he said, as we begin to round up, now you were talking about insurance. Now, how much do we need to bring other people to enable, if we're talking about rejigging or reinventing this scheme, how much do we need to bring other people? Because now we know that, like you have both said, some other institutions like Harvard Business School have inculcated this scheme. Even Unizik, like I read, they've also inculcated.
They're reviewing the...
They're reviewing the process.
Yes,
exactly. So now you have boys like made men at this time that I know, like Ifeanyi Uba, who walked through this process, and a lot of parents want their children to be like them. So how much can other people or private players apart from the government help to reinvent this program? And then you talked about insurance. We have this habit of this culture of watering down on insurance. So how much will insurance actually help the scheme?
Okay. And I'm going to answer this slightly differently, but I'll head to this question as to insurance. But taking a cue from the question you asked them, you know, a system that says get all you can all you get, and sit on the can is not sustainable.
Okay.
And what do I mean by that? And, you know, I thought you were also going to ask me about how wastage is entrenched as a result of the Igbo Apprenticeship System. You slightly talked around that when you started to talk about pressure from parents.
Societal pressure.
And then this pressure is akin to also individualism and the drive for competition above competitiveness. So you have the Alaba market, you have the computer villages. You know, have we at some point aggregated, you know, the caliber of people in that segment to say, okay, this is actually a venture capital, an incubator of some sort. But is there a way that people are paying into a pool, and that goes to insurance, that they're saying we're paying into a pool, you know, for an unlikely event. We're contributing for the future generation, you know, to assuage, because risk is imminent. Every day we get up is risk, is a challenge. You know, that you are moving out, you are not assured of coming back, but we still move anyway. So how will that system begin to, you know, reinvent itself to the extent that they can start to, you know, pull out funds? Because when we talk about insurance, we've had farmers insurance in the US, and all farmers insurance became farmers insurance, you know, as a result of farmers contributing when nobody was ready to insure them. We have progressive insurance also in the UK, and we have so clustered forms of insurances to assuage the risk that people face as a result of these things. So I you know, posit that the beneficiaries therein, they should have some kind of sinking fund,
okay,
that can eventually become, you know, one, a venture capital, a tool for investing in others.
So you have to bring yourself together.
Yes, there has to be pulling.
Okay.
They have to move away from the individualism and competitiveness, where I don't buy car, you never buy your own car, to saying what, and they have to move from just individualism to impact. You see, a society that is foisted on materialism cannot survive. That's why we're here. That's why even the values learnt as a result of the apprenticeship system is fast being eroded. The values of character, of perseverance, of patience, you know, all of those things of loyalty is no longer there. People are arching each other down. Is that the business, or is that a model you want to have to move from generation to generation? No. So when we start to talk about this, there has to be, he was trying to nip it in the bud, saying there has to be a reorientation, a mindset shift,
okay,
a paradigm shift, you know, from competing to seeing how can we create impact. And that's the only true insurance that we can experience, particularly along those lines. Well, for me, I put it in that light, and I hope that somehow whoever is listening, and those that, you know, like they are the ones positing to government along those lines around the southeast, will say, okay, can we start to create those funds, those aggregation of funds to help assuage any unlikely occurrence, to also save the future generations, like a sovereign wealth fund, but not necessarily as a sovereign wealth fund of a nation. But can you imagine the wealth fund of Igbo, you know, to say we want to help the apprenticeship system? All of them from Ekele Diduchukwu, if they are pulled into that fund, do you know what we would have been talking about today? Trillions. But because we failed to open up, and when you have such funds, now that's when you can actually even bring in externals. That's when you can bring in the United Arab Emirates. That's when you can bring in investment from San Francisco, because then it's open. But right now, nobody even sees what goes on. We just know that everything is close-knitted, private enterprises, clustered, no corporate governance, nothing, and then you want people to invest. No way.
All right, thank you so much for your time, gentlemen, for spending your time and talking to us on this topic. It's been a wonderful time. I've been educated and entertained. It's been a wonderful time talking to you, Dr. Law Mefor, media consultant.
Thank you so much for your time.
And Taiwo Adepoju, it's been a wonderful time having this discussion with you.
Okay.
All right, so viewers, you've heard it all. Our time is fast spent. I'm sure that you must have been rightly educated, entertained, and informed as we've been chatting with Dr. Law Mefor, who is a media consultant, and we've been chatting with Taiwo Adepoju. He is managing partner and CEO of Strength Africa Limited. And it's been a wonderful time here on The Conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in, and keep watching The Conversation because you never know who my next guest will be. I will see you next time. From the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Annabelle Oji. God bless Nigeria.